You were up at 3 a.m. watching cooking videos. How are you awake right now?
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Hello. Which I guess.
Never.
Go, go, go! Gotta go! I'm out of here!
Spike planted.
I'm out of here! Take this! Gotta go! Down!
Last player standing.
Prepare yourselves. We fight once again.
No wizards. Let's take a goes.
Go, go, go!
Thank you. Multiple enemies A.
I'm out of here!
Enemy spotted A.
Go, go, go! I'm out of here! Take this! This way!
Drop in a smoke.
Spike planted.
No charges left.
Last player standing.
Fade's mind games are no match
Hello,
for my
guys.
secret weapon.
We need a plan.
Ibuprofen.
We need not to push, and we wait for them to come.
Gotta go!
As one.
Maybe they came from mid.
Go, go, go!
Enemy spotted B.
Spike down B.
Enemy spotted B.
No peeking.
Eyes down. Healing you.
Gotta go!
One enemy
Watch
remaining. Spike down
Spike
B.
spotted B.
Coming through! Gotta go!
Reloading. And have one of these.
30 seconds left.
Aw, thought you'd try harder.
I'm out of here!
Wonderful. You couldn't kill us. Now they're
Nice
dead.
guys.
Wonderful. Go, go, go! Gotta go!
Just sit there, Neon, while she's running. They will cover. Many enemies.
I'm out of here! Watch out!
Spike planted. Last player standing.
Save, Reyna, save. Mash right.
Just let them try to catch me.
This is gonna be fun.
Go, go, go! Get out of my way! No peeking. Enemy spotted A. I'm out of here! Hi! I'm pissed!
Spike
Take
planted.
this!
Cypher buried.
Last player standing.
Aa.
Team Ace.
Snack time! Sorry. Only brought enough for me. Gotta go! Could be worse, could be better.
What's gonna be better? See what you can
Drop
do.
in a smoke.
Lobby.
Enemy spotted B.
I'm out of here.
Spike planted.
Oh,
Last player standing.
can't pop. Oh,
Flawless.
Deep breaths, everyone. Your hearts are pounding.
come on, guys, let's focus.
Go, go, go! Gotta go!
Keep up.
There! Back off! My ult's ready! Go, go, go!
Enemy spotted. Met. Right
Spike
here.
planted.
Removed.
I know exactly
This
where
way!
you are.
Watch out! Got one.
Last player standing. One enemy remaining.
My ult's ready. Don't rush me.
Nice try, but fine.
Please stay alive. I hate making new friends.
Come on, guys, don't surrender. We're just warming up. Let's go now.
I'm out of here.
Go, go, go!
Gotta go. Here we go.
Spike down B.
Spike spotted B.
Push B.
One enemy remaining.
Yikes.
Nice, guys.
That sucks.
That's how we play.
They don't have a single life worth saving.
Let's rush them. My ultimate is ready.
Need a drop.
Gotta go.
Let's fly. Down you go. My ult is ready.
Still in sight.
Drop in a storm. Go, go, go.
Spike down A.
Coming through.
One enemy remaining. Spike planted.
That's how we play, guys. Nice, very nice.
Spike's down. I'm out of here. Even with numbers, anything can still happen. Remember that. I'm out of here.
Go, go, go!
Go, go, go.
Let's go.
Gotta go.
Watch this.
Running low.
Put your wish.
Reloading,
Oi,
reloading.
I'm pissed.
Give me those back. Enemy spotted mid.
I know exactly where you are.
Enemy spotted mid.
Spike planted.
Gotta go. I'm out of here.
Take the
This.
insight.
Coming through. Go, go, go.
I'm a camp.
One enemy remaining.
Three. for you.
Prepare for hellfire!
I'm out of here.
Are you kidding me right now? I've tried explosion.
Gotta go.
That's how we
Wonderful.
play, guys. Wonderful.
I reckon I'll take a kip after this.
Wonderful.
I've earned it.
My ultimate is ready.
I'm out of here.
Go, go, go!
Let's go.
Glove, I will come with you. Okay.
On my mark. Multiple enemies A. No peeking.
Spike planted.
Back like I never left.
Last player standing.
Jet grounded. Your duty is not over.
Last player standing.
Cypher removed.
Nice try, nice try.
Last round before the switch.
No point saving. Buy it all.
Reloading.
Go, go, go!
Get out of my way. I'm out of here.
Enemy spotted B.
Spike down B.
Opponent killed.
Gotta go.
Go, go, go!
Enemy spotted.
Last player standing. Spike planted.
Watch out. I'm out of here.
Prepare for hellfire!
Switching sides.
Race it to the spike sites. Gotta go. There. This is where we win. Reloading. With A. I'm out of here. No peeking. Reloading. Enemy spotted A.
Go, go, go!
Reloading. Enemy spotted A. Reloading. Reloading. Reloading.
Coming through!
Enemy spotted A. Reloading. 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 Healing.
One enemy remaining. Thirty seconds
Gotta
left.
go. Enemy spotted. A.
Last one down.
Wonderful. What will it be this time? Have any patterns emerged yet?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Enemy spotted mid.
Don't go
Wanted.
with spike, don't go with spike.
Multiple enemies B.
Give me spike.
Go, go, go! I
Spike
got
drop.
spike. I'm out of here. Gotta go!
On my mark. Plant a spike.
Enemy
Enemy spotted B. Reloading.
Spike planted.
Enemy spotted B.
One enemy remaining.
Down. Stay out of my head.
Nice guys.
I'm out of here. Gotta go!
Wonderful.
Oh. Thank you.
I'm out of here. Thank you. Go, go, go!
Keep up.
Go, go, go!
Drop in a smoke.
Enemy spotted B. Blocking sight. Gotta go. Work good.
I shot something.
Hard spike. Go, go, go.
I got spike down.
Next.
B.
I'm out of here.
Plant a spike.
Kill.
Gotta go. Out of charges.
Enemy spotted B. Enemy spotted B. Reloading.
One enemy
Spike
remaining.
planted. Go, go, go.
Reloading.
This place is nice, but not nice enough to die in. Let's win and get out of here.
Spike's here.
I'm out of here. I'm out of here.
I hope you enjoy, guys.
I don't quit.
Okay, let's go B.
Still in sight. Cutting the
Gotta
vision.
go. Shortcut. Drop it.
Many enemy.
No peeking.
Rotate.
Go, go, go.
Let's rotate, let's rotate. Oh my god.
Gotta go.
Running low. I'm out of here.
Go, go, go! Spike planted.
Last player standing.
Nice try.
Oh.
Okay, we know the drill. Stick to your
Okay.
roles and we'll crush it.
If we say rotate, we rotate. Reyna, why did you not rotate with us? We could win this game, this round.
Come on then! Watch this! Dropping smokes. One way. This way! Gotta go!
Last player standing. Spike down B.
My ult is ready. You know what we should do? I'll tell you. We should
Gotta
run.
go! There. There.
Let's go B. Let's go A, guys.
Right
Reyna,
here.
let's go A.
Careful here.
I'll show that brimstone true power.
No peeking.
Go, go, go!
Reloading.
Go back, left, go. Pick.
Go, go, go!
Drop in a smoke.
Your duty is not over.
Back where I am.
Headshot.
Still in sight.
I'm out of here.
Cutting ready.
Back like I never left. I'm out of here.
We're good!
Healing you.
Spike planted.
Last player standing.
Go.
One enemy
Be
remaining.
faster.
Nice, Jet. Very nice. I loved it.
Jet, you were the wind. So powerful. Well done.
Okay, that was funny.
Gotta go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Go, go, go!
Forward.
Pay attention to cipher traps.
I got
dropped.
Spike!
Enemy spotted A. Dropping smoke. Reloading.
Face your fear!
Cutting their vision.
Prepare for hellfire.
Taken out.
One enemy remaining.
On my mark.
Go, go, go!
Wonderful.
GG, guys.
Listen up. Kill them before they kill
Wonderful.
us.
I'm out of here.
On my mark.
I'm out of here. I'm here to stay.
Go, go, go! Get out of my way!
Dropping smokes. Enemy spotted B.
Enemy spotted mid.
Reloading. I'm out of here. Enemy spotted mid. Enemy spotted mid. Take this.
Our spike's down.
Target down.
Spike down mid.
I have the spike.
Our spike is down. Drop in a smoke.
Last player standing.
Nice try, nice try.
Woo! We got this.
Oh, no.
Gotta go!
Come on, guys, we got this, we got this.
Let's go!
No peeking.
Enemy spotted A.
Enemy spotted. Reloading.
Watch out! Go, go, go!
Blocking sight.
Last player standing. Flawless. Match point.
Yous don't get a reset button, so stay alive, please.
Gotta go!
Alright, muckers. Off we go.
Don't die, guys, don't die.
They will cower.
Enemy spotted. Dropping smoke. Woo! My ult
Is ready.
back like I never left.
One enemy remaining. Spike down B.
Wonderful. All right, lucky socks. Don't fail me now. Could I have a drop? Thanks. Thank you.
I will do it right there. Oh, that's great.
I'm out of here. My ultimate is ready.
This is a hard match. Oh, this is my first match, by the way, guys. It's a hard match. But if I don't, I will use my horse.
Cutting their vision.
Enemy spotted B. Reloading. My ult ready. Reloading.
Rotate,
Reloading.
wait. There is Cypher chance.
Gotta go.
Give me a spike.
Reloading. Spike drop.
I got spot.
I'm out of here.
Almost out. I'm out of here. Go, go, go.
This way.
Here we go. Found the spy.
Hi! I'm pissed.
Enemy spotted A.
30 seconds left.
Spike planted.
One enemy
Go, go.
remaining.
Have one of these. No peeking. Drop in a smoke.
Reloading.
There. End of story. Go, go, go. Ingat ka. Don't get stabbed. Bad way to go.
I'm out of here.
Gotta go.
Let's repeat it again. Let's push a little bit B, then rotate to A. Because of Cypher traps.
Gotta go. Wonderful.
Reloading.
Watch this!
Reloading.
Reloading.
Prepare for hellfire!
Rotate.
Enemy spotted me.
Go, go, go.
Rest. Your duty is not over.
Okay, let's fake rotate.
Cool.
Thirty seconds
Still
left.
inside.
Kill.
One enemy remaining.
Watch out.
Ow.
Healing.
Go, go, go.
Wonderful.
Switching sides. Overtime.
Very
My
nice, guys.
city needs me. I can't be away
Let's
from
keep like
Wonderful.
that.
Let's end this quickly.
Gotta go.
We can overcome them.
planted.
Enemy spotted. A.
Coming through!
Enemy spotted B.
One enemy remaining.
3. My ult is ready.
I'm out of here.
Very nice, guys. That's our boy.
Reloading.
This is our home. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Switching sides.
Need a
Match
drop.
point.
My advice? Don't get shot. Gotta go! Go, go, go!
Pay
Plant
attention,
the
they have
spike.
Odin also.
Blocking sight. Go, go, go! Short guy!
Down.
Spike down B.
He's on the top at your
Get
left.
out of my way!
Last player standing. Flawless. Switching sides. Overtime.
Overtime.
I'm amped! Let's go! I got things to do. I'm out of here!
Sage, don't push.
I love the sport. Enemy spotted mid.
Ellis!
Reloading.
I'm out of here!
Still in sight.
Take this!
Enemy spotted
Dropping
B.
smokes.
Enemy spotted me. This way!
Spike spotted B.
Go, go, go!
Last player standing.
Oh no.
Switching sides. Match point.
I hate to say it, but probably best to play as a team.
So, what's the plan?
Let's go from mid. Let's go from mid.
Go, go, go!
I will fake B
No
and come help you.
prisoners.
Drop in a smoke.
Enemy spotted net. Healing.
Gotta go!
Cutting their vision.
Pew, pew. Ah.
Yikes.
Let's rotate A.
Gotta go!
One enemy remaining.
You were barely worth the effort.
We deserve a cookie.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Switching sides.
Okay, guys, let's focus. On this one.
Overtime.
I know what must be done. No.
Okay, let's focus, guys.
Go, go, go! I'm out of here! Go, go, go!
Enemy spotted A. Be at peace.
Almost out!
Spike down A. One enemy remaining.
There you are.
Nice, guys.
Gotta go!
Switching sides. Match point.
Their lives are so meaningless. Might as well give them to me.
I'm out of here! Gotta go!
Let's go from mid. I will fake B. Mid,
Let's
mid,
fly.
mid. I will fake B.
Gotta go!
Enemy spotted.
Oh,
Enemy spotted mid.
I don't-
Spike down mid.
Poor wretch.
Woo!
Refreshing.
One enemy remaining.
Nice, very nice.
I have the spike.
Come on, guys. Nice, very nice.
Attackers win.
My ult is ready.
It's a good match. For a first match, it was a good one. What's wrong with this? Frankfurt have a problem. I will remove this. Okay.
فين الوز؟
Yes,
The
so
Wiz.
as I told you, I don't have a fifth player, so
No, we got the fifth player actually.
yeah, but I'm waiting for a friend to react to me because the plan was to play with him.
You got a deal. Okay, it's
Yeah,
alright.
so maybe another time, okay? But
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no problem.
bye.
اه العبوا كومبات ضروري. دابا خاصنا واحد فهمتي.
عندي بيسي مش معاك. نايس.
هو لويز ما تعرفش شي واحد نزيدو خصنا واحد ياك تبقى نشوفو واش كاين شي واحد والو صح. اه دابا كنا بدنا نلعبو معاك فهمتي اصلا ما جاتش. عاد لعبوا نشوفو واش يدخل. خصنا يقول لي بزاف خصنا نكملو الفايف ستاك. اصلا انا
اصبر. ويا وجه الفرمان قال لك اريس دخل باغي نكملوا تيم دغيا.
صوني عليه صح صوني عليه. شوف دابا خصنا واحد يلا كمل تفرج.
صبر شوف ما داخلينش.
ياك ما يكون تيستخفي العالم.
صبر صوني عليه واتساب يكون تليفون باس باقي جوالي ما دخلش.
مصيبه كحاجه.
عضو تسكير.
جلب لك شي واحد بحال هكا غاديش غير هذا دم اجي متقاضيش غير هذا متقاضيش حتى صافي.
الى داك الجين شوريكين دخل
صح خلي هاد البوي فريند ديال هذا يدخل.
فاك يور بوي فريند.
لا اسكت اصاحبي سير
لا
تخرج لينا على اسكت اصاحبي. الشرقي والحاله والصاد دابا بغات تصب الشتا شو هذا الجو كي داير صح دابا قول لي دابا بنادم يلا يكون باغي يمشي لابلاج مشيتي لتماك شوف دابا انت ساكن في مراكش احسن برشا شنو خير ساحلي ولا شنو داخلي
الله ينصر خوتنا في برشيد. راسي كنطلع الأم من فوق.
انا ماشي برشيدو
دير منين؟
انت راه تخرج لي ما عرفت من راه نضربك راه كتجي تنقص الهضره وما خرجوا صاحبي عايبني مع بنادم
شوف فيا
واش بغيت نضربك بحال البارح
يلا زيد.
الياس انس الحباغي خديت لك الجوست تحول
فينا هو حيد. شوف انت والله سير نضربك غتبقى دير الجون. نفصل معاك ما كنضحكش معاك. سير حيد سير يلا وحيد.
ولا خايف
واخ شنو
غنتخاصم معاك اصاحبي غنتخاصم معاك ما تخاصم ليا مع بنادم اصاحبي
Go, go, go!
تخاصم ليا مع بنادم جاوب سباب اصاحبي امك خانز اصاحبي اللي حسيني كلها بعد مني غنجي نضربك غنجي نضربك ما دقه ما والو غنجي نضربك صار دير لي شي واحد يلا
Enemy spotted B.
No! Ya Allah. Why are you fucking hitting the door, bro?
Enemy removed.
I'm out of here!
Last player standing.
One downside to being immortal. I can't play dead.
الو تسمعني؟ بتيسو so I'm gonna leave till المرة okay? Have fun, bye bye.
Reloading. Enemy spotted A.
This way!
Breaking them.
Go, go, go!
He hoped that he would not be spoken to, that he would not have to smile into any of these so well-known white faces. While he walked, held by his caution more rigid than an arrow, he prayed, as his mother had taught him to pray, for loving kindness. Yet he dreamed of the feel of a white man's forehead against his shoe. Again and again, until the head wobbled on the broken neck and his foot encountered nothing but the rushing blood. And he was thinking that it was only the hand of the Lord that had taken Royal away, because if he had stayed they would surely have killed him. When, turning a corner, he looked into Royal's face. Royal was now as tall as Gabriel, broad-shouldered, and lean. He wore a new suit, blue with broad, blue stripes, and carried, crooked under his arm, a brown paper bundle tied with string. He and Gabriel stared at one another for a second with no recognition. Royal stared in blank hostility, before, seeming to remember Gabriel's face. He took a burning cigarette from between his lips, and said, with pained politeness, "How to do, sir?" His voice was rough, and there was, faintly, the odor of whiskey on his breath. But Gabriel could not speak at once. He struggled to get his breath. Then, "Howdy do," he said, and they stood, each as though waiting for the other to say something of the greatest importance, on the deserted corner. Then, just as Royal was about to move, Gabriel remembered the white men all over town. "Boy," he cried, "ain't you got good sense? Don't you know you ain't got no business to be out here, walking around like this?" Royal stared at him, uncertain whether to laugh or to take offense, and Gabriel said more gently, "I just mean you better be careful, son. Ain't nothing but white folks in town today. They done killed last night." Then he could not go on. He saw, as though it were a vision, Royal's body, sprawled heavy and unmoving forever against the earth, and tears blinded his eyes. Royal watched him, a distant and angry compassion in his face. "I know," he said abruptly, "but they ain't going to bother me. They done got their nigger for this week. I ain't going far no way." Then the corner on which they stood seemed suddenly to rock with the weight of mortal danger. It seemed for a moment, as they stood there, that death and destruction rushed toward them. Two black men alone in the dark and silent town where white men prowled like lions. What mercy could they hope for, should they be found here, talking together? It would surely be believed that they were plotting vengeance. And Gabriel started to move away, thinking to save his son. "God bless you, boy," said Gabriel. "You hurry along now." "Yeah," said Royal, "thanks." He moved away, about to turn the corner. He looked back at Gabriel. "But you be careful, too," he said, and smiled. He turned the corner and Gabriel listened as his footfalls moved away. They were swallowed up in silence. He heard no voices raised to cut down Royal as he went his way. Soon there was silence everywhere. Not quite 2 years later, Deborah told him that his son was dead. And now John tried to pray. There was a great noise of weeping and of song. It was Sister McCandless who led the song, who sang it nearly alone, for the others did not cease to moan and cry. It was a song he had heard all his life. "Lord, I'm traveling, Lord. I got on my traveling shoes." Without raising his eyes, he could see her standing in the holy place, pleading the blood over those who sought there, her head thrown back, eyes shut, foot pounding the floor. She did not look. Then, like the Sister McCandless who sometimes came to visit them, like the woman who went out every day to work for the white people downtown, who came home at evening climbing with such weariness the long dark stairs. No, her face was transfigured now. Her whole being was made new by the power of her salvation. "Salvation is real," a voice said to him. "God is real. Death may come soon or late, why do you hesitate? Now is the time to seek and serve the Lord." Salvation was real for all these others, and it might be real for him. He had only to reach out and God would touch him. He had only to cry and God would hear. All these others now who cried so far beyond him with such joy, had once been in their sins as he was now, and they had cried and God had heard them, and delivered them out of all their troubles. And what God had done for others, he could also do for him. But, out of all their troubles? Why did his mother weep? Why did his father frown? If God's power was so great, why were their lives so troubled? He had never tried to think of their trouble before. Rather, he had never before confronted it in such a narrow place. It had always been there, at his back perhaps, all these years, but he had never turned to face it. Now it stood before him, staring, never more to be escaped. and its mouth was enlarged without any limit. It was ready to swallow him up. Only the hand of God could deliver him. Yet, in a moment, he somehow knew from the sound of that storm which rose so painfully in him now, which laid waste, forever, the strange yet comforting landscape of his mind, that the hand of God would surely lead him into the staring, waiting mouth, these distended jaws, this hot breath as of fire. He would be led into darkness, and in darkness would remain, until in some incalculable time to come the hand of God would reach down and raise him up. He, John, who having lain in darkness would no longer be himself but some other man. He would have been changed, as they said, forever. Sown in dishonor, he would be raised in honor. He would have been born again. Then he would no longer be the son of his father, but the son of his heavenly Father, the King. Then he need no longer fear his father, for he could take, as it were, their quarrel over his father's head to heaven, to the Father who loved him, who had come down in the flesh to die for him. Then he and his father would be equals in the sight and the sound and the love of God. Then his father could not beat him any more, or despise him any more, or mock him any more. He, John, the Lord's anointed. He could speak to his father then as men spoke to one another, as sons spoke to their fathers, not in trembling but in sweet confidence, not in hatred but in love. His father could not cast him out, whom God had gathered in. Yet, trembling, he knew that this was not what he wanted. He did not want to love his father. He wanted to hate him, to cherish that hatred, and give his hatred words one day. He did not want his father's kiss. Not any more, he who had received so many blows. He could not imagine, on any day to come and no matter how greatly he might be changed, wanting to take his father's hand. The storm that raged in him tonight could not uproot this hatred, the mightiest tree in all John's country, all that remained tonight in this John's flood time. And he bowed his head yet lower before the altar in weariness and confusion. Oh, that his father would die, and the road before John be open as it must be open for others. Yet in the very grave he would hate him. His father would but have changed conditions. He would be John's father still. The grave was not enough for punishment, for justice, for revenge. Hell, everlasting, unceasing, perpetual, unquenched forever, should be his father's portion. With John there to watch, to linger, to smile, to laugh aloud, hearing, at last, his father's cries of torment. And even then it would not be finished. The everlasting Father. Oh, but his thought were evil. But tonight he did not care. Somewhere in all this whirlwind, in the darkness of his heart, in the storm was something he must find. He could not pray. His mind was like the sea itself, troubled and too deep for the bravest man's descent, throwing up now and again, for the naked eyes to wonder at treasure and debris long forgotten on the bottom. Bones and jewels, fantastic shells, jelly that had once been flesh, pearls that had once been eyes. And he was at the mercy of this sea, hanging there with darkness all around him. The morning of that day, as Gabriel rose and started out to work, the sky was low and nearly black and the air too thick to breathe. Late in the afternoon the wind rose, the skies opened, and the rain came. The rain came down as though once more in heaven the Lord had been persuaded of the good uses of a flood. It drove before it the bowed wanderer, clapped children into houses, licked with fearful anger against the high, strong wall, and the wall of the lean-to, and the wall of the cabin, beat against the bark and the leaves of trees, trampled the broad grass, and broke the neck of the flower. The world turned dark, forever everywhere, and windows ran as though their glass panes bore all the tears of eternity, threatening at every instant to shatter inward against this force, uncontrollable, so abruptly visited on the earth. Gabriel walked homeward through this wilderness of water, which had failed, however, to clear the air, to where Deborah waited for him in the bed she seldom, these days, attempted to leave. And he had not been in the house 5 minutes before he was aware that a change had occurred in the quality of her silence. In the silence something waited, ready to spring. He looked up at her from the table where he sat eating the meal that she had painfully prepared. He asked, "How you feel today, old lady?" "I feel like about the way I always do." And she smiled. "I don't feel no better and I don't feel no worse. We going to get the church to pray for you," he said, "and get you on your feet again." She said nothing and he turned his attention once more to his plate. But she was watching him. He looked up. "I hear some mighty bad news today," she said slowly. "What you hear?" Sister MacDonald was over this afternoon, and Lord knows she was in a pitiful state. He sat stock still, staring at her. She done got a letter today what says her grandson, that royal done got himself killed in Chicago. It sure look like the Lord is put a curse on that family. First the mother, and now the son. For a moment he could only stare at her stupidly, while the food in his mouth slowly grew heavy and dry. Outside rushed the armies of the rain, and lightning flashed against the window. Then he tried to swallow, and his gorge rose. He began to tremble. Yes, she said, not looking at him now. He been living in Chicago about a year, just a-drinking and a-carrying on. And his grandmama, she tell me that looked like he got to gambling one night with some of them northern niggers, and one of them got mad because he thought the boy was trying to cheat him and took out his knife and stabbed him. Stabbed him in the throat, and she tell me he died right there on the floor in that barroom. Didn't even have time to get him to no hospital. She turned in bed and looked at him. The Lord sure give that poor woman a heavy cross to bear. Then he tried to speak. He thought of the churchyard where Esther was buried, and Royal's first thin cry. She going to bring him back home? She stared. Home? Honey, they done buried him already up there in the potter's field. Ain't nobody never going to look on that poor boy no more. Then he began to cry, not making a sound, sitting at the table, and with his whole body shaking. She watched him for a long while and, finally, he put his head on the table, overturning the coffee cup, and wept aloud. Then it seemed that there was weeping everywhere, waters of anguish riding the world. Gabriel weeping and rain beating on the roof, and at the windows, and the coffee dripping from the end of the table. And she asked at last, Gabriel, that royal, he were your flesh and blood, weren't he? Yes, he said, glad even in his anguish to hear the words fall from his lips. That was my son. And there was silence again. Then, and you sent that girl away, didn't you? With the money out in that box. Yes, he said. Yes. Gabriel, she asked, why did you do it? Why you let her go off and die all by herself? Why ain't you never said nothing? And now he could not answer. He could not raise his head. Why? She insisted. Honey, I ain't never asked you, but I got a right to know. And when you wanted a son so bad. Then, shaking, he rose from the table and walked slowly to the window, looking out. I asked my God to forgive me, he said. But I didn't want no harlot's son. Esther weren't no harlot, she said quietly. She weren't my wife, and I couldn't make her my wife. I already had you, and he said the last words with venom. Esther's mind weren't on the Lord. She'd have dragged me right on down to hell with her. She mighty near has, said Deborah. The Lord he held me back, he said, hearing the thunder, watching the lightning. He put out his hand and held me back. Then, after a moment, turning back into the room, I couldn't have done nothing else, he cried. What else could I have done? Where could I have gone with Esther, and me a preacher, too? And what could I have done with you? He looked at her, old and black and patient, smelling of sickness and age and death. Ah, he said, his tears still falling. I bet you was mighty happy today, old lady, weren't you? When she told you Royal, my son, was dead. You ain't never had no son. And he turned again to the window. Then, how long you been knowing about this? I been knowing, she said. Ever since that evening, way back there, when Esther come to church. You got a evil mind, he said. I hadn't never touched her then. No, she said slowly. But you had already done touched me. He moved a little from the window and stood looking down at her from the foot of the bed. Gabriel, she said. I've been praying all these years that the Lord would touch my body and make me like them women, all them women you used to go with all the time. She was very calm. Her face was very bitter and patient. Looked like it weren't his will. Looked like I couldn't know how forget. How they done me way back there when I weren't nothing but a girl. She paused and looked away. But, Gabriel, if you'd said something even when that poor girl was buried, if you'd wanted to own that poor boy, I wouldn't know how have cared what folks said, or where we might have had to go, or nothing. I'd have raised him like my own. I swear to my God I would have, and he might be living now. Deborah, he asked, what you been thinking all this time? She smiled. I been thinking, she said, how you better commence to tremble when the Lord, he gives you your heart's desire. She paused. I'd been wanting you since I wanted anything. And then I got you. He walked back to the window, tears rolling down his face. Honey, she said, in another, stronger voice. You better pray God to forgive you. You better not let go until he make you know you've been forgiven. Yes, he sighed. I'm waiting on the Lord. Then there was only silence, except for the rain. The rain came down in buckets. It was raining, as they said, pitchforks and nigger babies. Lightning flashed again across the sky and thunder rolled. Listen, said Gabriel. God is talking. Slowly now, he rose from his knees, for half the church was standing. Sister Price, Sister McCandless, and praying Mother Washington. And the young Ella May sat in her chair watching Alicia where he lay. Florence and Elizabeth were still on their knees, and John was on his knees. And rising, Gabriel thought of how the Lord had led him to this church so long ago, and how Elizabeth, one night after he had preached, had walked this long aisle to the altar, to repent before God her sin. And then they had married, for he believed her when she said that she was changed, and she was the sign, she and her nameless child, for which he had tarried so many dark years before the Lord. It was as though, when he saw them, the Lord had returned to him again that which was lost. Then, as he stood with the others over the fallen Alicia, John rose from his need. He bent a dazed, sleepy, frowning look on Alicia and the others, shivering a little as though he were cold. And then he felt his father's eyes and looked up at his father. John and his father stared at each other, struck dumb and still and with something come to life between them. While the Holy Ghost spoke, Gabriel had never seen such a look on John's face before. Satan, at that moment, stared out of John's eyes while the Spirit spoke. And yet John's staring eyes tonight reminded Gabriel of other eyes. Of his mother's eyes when she beat him, of Florence's eyes when she mocked him, of Deborah's eyes when she prayed for him, of Esther's eyes and Royal's eyes, and Elizabeth's eyes tonight before Roy cursed him, and of Roy's eyes when Roy said, "You black bastard." And John did not drop his eyes, but seemed to want to stare forever into the bottom of Gabriel's soul. And Gabriel, scarcely believing that John could have become so brazen, stared in wrath and horror at Elizabeth's presumptuous bastard boy, grown suddenly so old and evil. He nearly raised his hand to strike him, but did not move, for Alicia lay between them. Then he said, soundlessly, with his lips, "Kneel down." John turned suddenly, the movement like a curse, and knelt again before the altar. 3 Elizabeth's prayer. Lord, I wish I had have died in Egypt land. While Alicia was speaking, Elizabeth felt that the Lord was speaking a message to her heart, that this fiery visitation was meant for her, and that she humbled herself to listen, God would give to her the interpretation. This certainty did not fill her with exultation, but with fear. She was afraid of what God might say, of what displeasure, what condemnation, what prophesies of trial yet to be endured might issue from his mouth. Now Alicia ceased to speak, and rose. Now he sat at the piano. There was muted singing all around her. Yet she waited. Before her mind's eyes wavered, in a light like the light from a fire, the face of John, whom she had brought so unwillingly into the world. It was for his deliverance that she wept tonight, that he might be carried, past wrath unspeakable, into a state of grace. They were singing, "Must Jesus bear the cross alone, and all the world go free?" Alicia picked out the song on the piano, his fingers seeming to hesitate, almost to be unwilling. She, too, strained against her great unwillingness, but forced her heart to say amen, as the voice of praying Mother Washington picked up the response. "No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me." She heard weeping near her. Was it Ella May, or Florence, or the echo, magnified, of her own tears? The weeping was buried beneath the song. She had been hearing this song all her life. She had grown up with it. She had never understood it as well as she understood it now. It filled the church, as though the church had merely become a hollow or a void, echoing with the voices that had driven her to this dark place. Her aunt had sung it always, harshly, under her breath, in a bitter pride. "The consecrated cross I'll bear till death shall set me free, and then go home, a crown to wear, for there's a crown for me." She was probably an old woman now, still in the same harshness of spirit, singing this song in the tiny house down home which she and Elizabeth had shared so long. And she did not know of Elizabeth's shame. Elizabeth had not written about John until long after she was married to Gabriel. and the Lord had never allowed her aunt to come to New York City. Her aunt had always prophesied that Elizabeth would come to no good end, proud and vain, and foolish as she was, and having been allowed to run wild all her childhood years. Her aunt had come second in the series of disasters that has ended Elizabeth's childhood. First, when she was 8, going on 9, her mother had died, an event not immediately recognized by Elizabeth as a disaster, since she had scarcely known her mother and had certainly never loved her. Her mother had been very fair and beautiful and delicate of health, so that she stayed in bed most of the time, reading spiritualist pamphlets concerning the benefits of disease and complaining to Elizabeth's father of how she suffered. Elizabeth remembered of her only that she wept very easily and that she smelled like stale milk. It was, perhaps, her mother's disquieting color that, whenever she was held in her mother's arms, made Elizabeth think of milk. Her mother did not, however, hold Elizabeth in her arms very often. Elizabeth very quickly suspected that this was because she was so very much darker than her mother and not nearly, of course, so beautiful. When she faced her mother she was shy, downcast, sullen. She did not know how to answer her mother's shrill, meaningless questions, put with the furious affectation of material concern. She could not pretend, when she kissed her mother, or submitted to her mother's kiss, that she was moved by anything more than an unpleasant sense of duty. This, of course, bred in her mother a kind of baffled fury, and she never tired of telling Elizabeth that she was an unnatural child. But it was very different with her father. She was, and so Elizabeth never failed to think of him, young and handsome and kind and generous, and he loved his daughter. He told her that she was the apple of his eye, that she was wound around his heartstrings, that she was surely the finest little lady in the land. When she was with her father she pranced and postured like a very queen, and she was not afraid of anything, save the moment when he would say that it was bedtime, or that he had to be getting along. He was always buying her things to wear and things to play with, and taking her on Sundays from long walks through the country, or to the circus when the circus was in town, or to Punch and Judy shows. And he was dark like Elizabeth and gentle and proud. He had never been angry with her, but she had seen him angry a few times with other people. Her mother, for example, and later, of course, her aunt. Her mother was always angry and Elizabeth paid no attention. And later, her aunt was perpetually angry and Elizabeth learned to bear it. But if her father has ever been angry with her, in those days, she would have wanted to die. Neither had he ever learned of her disgrace. When it happened, she could not think how to tell him, how to bring such pain to him who had had such pain already. Later, when she would have told him, he was long past caring, in the silent ground. She thought of him now while the singing and weeping went on around her, and she thought how he would have loved his grandson, who was like him in so many ways. Perhaps she dreamed it, but she did not believe she dreamed when at moments she thought she heard in John echoes, curiously distant and distorted, of her father's gentleness, and the trick of his laugh. How he threw his head back and the years that marked his face fled away, and the soft eyes softened and the mouth turned at the corners like a little boy's mouth, and that deadly pride of her father's behind which he retired when confronted by the nastiness of other people. It was he who had told her to weep when she wept alone. Never to let the world see, never to ask for mercy. If one had to die, to go ahead and die, but never to let oneself be beaten. He had said this to her on one of the last times she had seen him, when she was being carried miles away, to Maryland, to live with her aunt. She had reason, in the years that followed, to remember his saying this, and time, at last, to discover in herself the depths of bitterness in her father from which these words had come. For when her mother died, the world fell down. Her aunt, her mother's older sister, arrived, and stood appalled at Elizabeth's vanity and uselessness, and decided immediately that her father was not fit person to raise a child, especially, as she darkly said, an innocent little girl. And it was this decision on the part of her aunt, for which Elizabeth did not forgive her for many years, that precipitated the third disaster, the separation of herself from her father, from all that she loved on earth. For her father ran what her aunt called a house. Not the house where they lived, but another house to which, as Elizabeth gathered, wicked people often came. And he had also, to Elizabeth's rather horrified confusion, a stable. Low, common niggers, the lowest of the low, came from all over and sometimes brought their women and sometimes found them there, to eat and drink cheap moonshine and play music all night long, and to do worse things, her aunt's dreadful silence then suggested, which were far better left unsaid. And she would, she swore, move heaven and earth before she would let her sister's daughter grow up with such a man. without, however, so much as looking at heaven, and without troubling any more of the earth than that part of it which held the courthouse, she won the day. Like a clap of thunder, or like a magic spell, like light one moment and darkness the next, Elizabeth's life had changed. Her mother was dead, her father banished, and she lived in the shadow of her aunt. Or, more exactly, as she thought now, the shadow in which had lived was fear, fear made more dense by hatred. Not for a moment had she judged her father. It would have made no difference to her love for him had she been told, and even seen it proved, that he was first cousin to the devil. The proof would not have existed for her, and if it had she would not have regretted being his daughter, or have asked for anything better than to suffer at his side in hell. And when she had been taken from him, her imagination had been wholly unable to lend reality to the wickedness of which he stood accused. She, certainly, did not accuse him. She screamed in anguish when he put her from him and turned to go, and she had to be carried to the train. And later, when she understood perfectly all that had happened then, still in her heart she could not accuse him. Perhaps his life had been wicked, but he had been very good to her. His life had certainly cost him enough in pain to make the world's judgment a thing of no account. They had not known him as she had known him. They did not care as she had cared. It only made her sad that he never, as he had promised, came to take her away, and that while she was growing up she saw him so seldom. When she became a young woman she did not see him at all. But that was her own fault. No, she did not accuse him, but she accused her aunt, and this from the moment she understood that her aunt had loved her mother, but did not love him. This could only mean that her aunt could not love her, either, and nothing in her life with her aunt ever proved Elizabeth wrong. It was true that her aunt was always talking of how much she loved her sister's daughter, and what great sacrifices she had made on her account, and what great care she took to see to it that Elizabeth should grow up a good Christian girl. But Elizabeth was not for a moment fooled, and did not, for as long as she lived with her, fail to despise her aunt. She sensed that what her aunt spoke of as love was something else. A bribe, a threat, an indecent will to power. She knew that the kind of imprisonment that love might impose was also, mysteriously, a freedom for the soul and spirit, was water in the dry place, and had nothing to do with the prisons, churches, laws, rewards, and punishments that so positively cluttered the landscape of her aunt's mind. And yet, tonight, in her great confusion, she wondered if she had not been wrong. If there had not been something that she had overlooked, for which the Lord had made her suffer. "You little Miss Great I am," her aunt had said to her in those days. "You better watch your step, you hear me? You go walking around with your nose in the air, the Lord's going to let you fall right on down to the bottom of the ground. You mark my words. You'll see." To this perpetual accusation Elizabeth had never replied. She merely regarded her aunt with a wide-eyed insolent stare, meant at once to register her disdain and to thwart any pretext for punishment. And this trick, which she had, unconsciously, picked up from her father, rarely failed to work. As the years went on, her aunt seemed to gauge in a look the icy distances that Elizabeth had put between them, and that would certainly never be conquered now. And she would add, looking down and under her breath, "'Cause God don't like it. I sure don't care what God don't like, or you either," Elizabeth Hart replied. "I'm going away from here. He's going to come and get me, and I'm going away from here." He was her father who never came. As the years passed, she replied only, "I'm going away from here," and it hung, this determination, like a heavy jewel between her breasts. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. She had not known this. She had not imagined that she could fall. She wondered, tonight, how she could give this knowledge to her son. If she could help him to endure what could now no longer be changed. If forever, she came into the store alone, wearing her best white summer dress and with her hair, newly straightened and curled, at the ends, tied with a scarlet ribbon. She was going to a great church picnic with her aunt, and had come in to buy some lemons. She passed the owner of the store, who was a very fat man, sitting out on the pavement, fanning himself. He asked her as she passed, if it was hot enough for her, and she said something and walked into the dark, heavy-smelling store, where flies buzzed, and where Richard sat on the counter reading a book. She felt immediately guilty about having disturbed him, and muttered apologetically that she only wanted to buy some lemons. She expected him to get them for her in his sullen fashion and go back to his book. But he smiled and said, "Is that all you want? You better think now. You sure you ain't forgot nothing?" She had never seen him smile before, nor had she really, for that matter, ever heard his voice. Her heart gave a dreadful leap and then, as dreadfully, seemed to have stopped forever. She could only stand there, staring at him. If he had asked her to repeat what she wanted, she could not possibly have remembered what it was. And she found that she was looking into his eyes, and where she had thought there was no light at all, she found a light she had never seen before, and he was smiling still, but there was something curiously urgent in his smile. Then he said, "How many lemons, little girl?" "6," she said at last, and discovered to her vast relief that nothing had happened. The sun was still shining, the fat man still sat at the door, her heart was beating as though it had never stopped. She was not, however, fooled. She remembered the instant at which her heart had stopped, and she knew that it beat now with a difference. He put the lemons into a bag with a curious difference. She came closer to the counter to give him the money. She was in a terrible state, for she found that she could neither take her eyes off him nor look at him. "Is that your mother you come in with all the time?" he asked. "No," she said. "That's my aunt." She did not know why she said it, but she said, "My mother's dead." "Oh," he said. "Then mine too." They both looked thoughtfully at the money on the counter. He picked it up, but did not move. "I didn't think it was your mother," he said finally. "Why?" "I don't know. She don't look like you." He started to light a cigarette, and then looked at her and put the packet in his pocket again. "Don't mind me," she said quickly. "Anyway, I got to go. She's waiting, we going out." He turned and banged the cash register. She picked up her lemons. He gave her her change. She felt that she ought to say something else. It didn't seem right somewhat just to walk out. But she could not think of anything. But he said, "Then that's why you so dressed up today. Where you going to go?" "We going to a picnic. A church picnic," she said, and suddenly, unaccountably, and for the first time, smiled. And he smiled, too, and lit his cigarette, blowing the smoke carefully away from her. "You like picnics?" "Sometimes," she said. She was not comfortable with him yet, and still she was beginning to feel that she would like to stand and talk to him all day. She wanted to ask him what he was reading, but she did not dare. Yet, "What's your name?" she abruptly brought out. "Richard," he said. "Oh," she said thoughtfully. Then, "Mine's Elizabeth." "I know," he said. "I heard her call you one time." "Well," she said helplessly after a long pause, "goodbye." "Goodbye? You ain't going away, is you?" "Oh no," she said in confusion. "Well," he said and smiled and bowed. "Good day." "Yes," she said. "Good day." And she turned and walked out into the streets. No, the same streets from which she had entered a moment ago. These streets, the sky above, the sun, the drifting people all had, in a moment, changed and would never be the same again. "You remember that day?" he asked much later. "When you come into the store?" "Yes." "Well, you was mighty pretty. I didn't think you never looked at me." "Well, I didn't think you never looked at me." "You was reading a book." "Yes." "What book was it, Richard?" "Oh, I don't remember. Just a book." "You smiled." "You did too." "No, I didn't." "I remember." "Yes, you did." "No, I didn't. Not till you did." "Well, anyway, you was mighty pretty." She did not like to think of what hardness of heart, what calculated weeping, what deceit, what cruelty she now went into battle with her aunt for her freedom. And she wanted, even though on certain not to be dismissed conditions. The principal condition was that she should put herself under the protection of a distant, unspeakably respectable female relative of her aunt's, who lived in New York City. For when the summer ended, Richard said that he was going there and he wanted her to come with him. They would get married there. Richard said that he hated the South, and this was perhaps the reason it did not occur to either of them to begin their married life there. And Elizabeth was checked by the fear that if her aunt should discover how things stood between her and Richard, she would find, as she had found, so many years before in the case of her father, some means of bringing about their separation. This, as Elizabeth later considered it, was the first in the sordid series of mistakes which was to cause her to fall so low. But to look back from the stony plain along the road which led one to that place is not at all the same thing as walking on the road. The perspective, to say the very least, changes only with the journey, only when the road has, all abruptly and treacherously, and with an absoluteness that permits no argument, turned or dropped or risen is one able to see all that one could not have seen from any other place. In those days, had the Lord himself descended from heaven with trumpets telling her to turn back, she could scarcely have heard him, and could certainly not have heeded. She lived, in those days, in a fiery storm, of which Richard was the center and the heart. And she fought only to reach him, only that. She was afraid of what might happen if they were kept from one another, for what might come after she had no thoughts or fears to spare. Her pretext for coming to New York was to take advantage of the greater opportunities the North offered colored people, to study in a northern school, and to find a better job than any she was likely to be offered in the South. Her aunt, who listened to this with no diminution of her habitual scorn, was yet unable to deny that from generation to generation, things, as she grudgingly put it, were bound to change, and neither could she quite take the position of seeming to stand in Elizabeth's way. In the winter of 1920, as the year began, Elizabeth found herself in an ugly back room in Harlem in the home of her aunt's relative, a woman whose respectability was immediately evident from the incense she burned in her rooms and the spiritualist seances she held every Saturday night. The house was still standing, not very far away. Often she was forced to pass it. Without looking up, she was able to see the windows of the apartment in which she had lived, and the woman's sign was in the window still. Madam Williams, spiritualist. She found a job as a chambermaid in the same hotel in which Richard worked as lift boy. Richard said that they would marry as soon as he had saved some money. But since he was going to school at night and made very little money, their marriage, which she had thought of as taking place almost as soon as she arrived, was planned for a future that grew ever more remote. And this presented her with a problem that she had refused, at home in Maryland, to think about, but from which now she could not escape, the problem of their life together. Reality, so to speak, burst in for the first time on her great dreaming, and she found occasion to wonder, ruefully, what had made her imagine that, once with Richard, she would have been able to withstand him. She had kept, precariously enough, what her aunt referred to as her pearl without price while she had been with Richard down home. This, which she had taken as witness to her own feminine moral strength, had been due to nothing more, it now developed, than her great fear of her aunt, and the lack in that small town of opportunity. Here, in this great city where no one cared, where people might live in the same building for years and never speak to one another, she found herself, when Richard took her in his arms, on the edge of a steep place, and down she rushed on the descent uncaring into the dreadful sea. So it began. Had it been waiting for her since the day she had been taken from her father's arm? The world in which she now found herself was not unlike the world from which she had, so long ago, been rescued. Here were the women who had been the cause of her aunt's most passionate condemnation of her father, hard drinking, hard taking, with whiskey and cigarette breath, and moving with the mystic authority of women who knew what sweet violence might be acted out under the moon and stars, or beneath the tigerish lights of the city, in the raucous hay or the singing bed. And was she, Elizabeth, so sweetly fallen, so tightly chained, one of these women now? And here were the men who had come day and night to visit her father's stable, with their sweet talk and music, and their violence and their sex, black, brown, and beige, who looked on her with lewd, and lustful, and laughing eyes. And these were Richard's friends. Not one of them ever went to church. One might scarcely have imagined that they knew that churches existed. They all, hourly, daily, in their speech, in their lives, and in their hearts, cursed God. They all seemed to be saying, as Richard, when she once timidly mentioned the love of Jesus, said, "You can tell that puking bastard to kiss my big black arse." She, for very terror on hearing this, had wept. Yet she could not deny that for such an abundance of bitterness there was a positive fountain of grief. There was not, after all, a great difference between the world of the North and that of the South which she had fled. There was only this difference. The North promised more. And this similarity, what it promised it did not give, and what it gave, at length and grudgingly with one hand, it took back with the other. Now she understood in this nervous, hollow, ringing city, that nervousness of Richard's which had so attracted her. A tension so total, and so without the hope, or the possibility of release or resolution, that she felt it in his muscles, and heard it in his breathing, even as on her breast he fell asleep. And this was perhaps why she had never thought to leave him, frightened though she was during all that time, and in a world in which, had it not been for Richard, she could have found no place to put her feet. She did not leave him, because she was afraid of what it might happen to him without her. She did not resist him because he needed her, and she did not press about marriage because, Upset as he was about everything, she was afraid of having him upset about her, too. She thought of herself as his strength. In a world of shadows, the indisputable reality to which he could always repair. And again, for all that had come, she could not regret this. She had tried, but she had never been and was not now, even tonight, truly sorry. Where, then, was her repentance? And how could God hear her cry? They had been very happy together in the beginning, and until the very end he had been very good to her, had not ceased to love her and tried always to make her know it. No more than she had been able to accuse her father, had she ever been able to accuse him. His weakness she understood, and his terror and even his bloody end. What life had made him bear, her lover, this wild, unhappy boy, many another stronger and more virtuous man might not have borne so well. Saturday was their best day, for they only worked until 1:00. They had all the afternoon to be together, and nearly all of the night, since Madame William had her séances on Saturday night and preferred that Elizabeth, before whose silent skepticism departed spirits might find themselves reluctant to speak, should not be in the house. They met at the service entrance. Richard was always there before her, looking, oddly, much younger and less anonymous without the ugly, tight-fitting black uniform that he had to wear when working. He would be talking or laughing with some of the other boys, or shooting dice, and when he heard her step down the long stone hall he would look up, laughing, and wickedly nudging one of the other boys he would half shout, half sing, "Why, look-a there, ain't she pretty?" She never failed at this, which was why he never failed to do it, to blush, half smiling, half frowning, and nervously to touch the collar of her dress. "Sweet Georgia Brown," somebody might say. "Miss Brown to you," said Richard then, and took her arm. "Yeah, that's right," somebody else would say. "You better hold on to little Miss Bright Eyes. Don't somebody sure gonna take her away from you." "Yeah," said another voice. "And it might be me." "Oh, no," said Richard, moving with her toward the street. "Ain't nobody going to take my little bit away from me. Little bit." It had been his name for her, and sometimes he called her Sandwich Mouth, or Funny Face, or Frog Eyes. She would not, of course, have endured these names from anyone else, nor had she not found herself with joy and helplessness and a sleeping panic. Living it out, would she ever have suffered herself so publicly to become a man's property? Concubine. Her aunt would have said, and at night, alone, she rolled the word, tart like lemon rind, on her tongue. She was descending with Richard to the sea. She would have to climb back up alone, but she did not know this then. Leaving the boys in the hall, they gained the midtown New York streets. "And what we going to do today, little bit?" With that smile of his, and those depthless eyes, beneath the towers of the white city, with people white, hurrying all around them. "I don't know, honey. What you want to do?" "Well, maybe we go to a museum." The first time he suggested this, she demanded, in panic, if they would be allowed to enter. "Sure, they let niggers in," Richard said. "Ain't we got to be educated, too, to live with the mothers?" He never watched his language with her, which at first she took as evidence of his contempt because she had fallen so easily, and which later she took as evidence of his love. And then he took her to the Museum of Natural History, or the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where they were almost certain to be the only black people, and he guided her through the halls, which never ceased in her imagination to be as cold as tombstones. It was then she saw another life in him. It never ceased to frighten her. This passion he brought to something she could not understand. For she never grasped, not at any rate with her mind, what, with such incandescence, he tried to tell her on these Saturday afternoons. She could not find, between herself and the African statuette, or totem pole, on which he gazed with such melancholy wonder, any point of contact. She was only glad that she did not look that way. She preferred to look in the other museum at the paintings, but still she did not understand anything he said about them. She did not know why he so adored things that were so long dead, what sustenance they give him, what secrets he hoped to wrest from them. But she understood, at least, that they did give him a kind of bitter nourishment, and that the secrets they held for him were a matter of his life and death. It frightened her because she felt that he was reaching for the moon and that he would, therefore, be dashed down against the rocks. But she did not say any of this. She only listened, and in her heart she prayed for him. But on other Saturdays they went to see a movie. They went to see a play. They visited his friends. They walked through Central Park. She liked the park because, however spuriously, It recreated something of the landscape she had known. How many afternoons had they walked there? She had always since avoided it. They bought peanuts and for hours fed the animals at the zoo. They bought soda pop and drank it on the grass. They walked along the reservoir and Richard explained how a city like a New York found water to drink. Mixed with her fear for him was a total admiration. That he had learned so young, so much. People stared at them but she did not mind. He noticed but he did not seem to notice. But sometimes he would ask, in the middle of a sentence, concerned possibly with ancient Rome, "Little bit, Jew love me?" And she wondered how he could doubt it. She thought how infirm she must be not to have been able to make him know it. And she raised her eyes to his, and she said the only thing she could say, "I wish to God I may die if I don't love you. There ain't no sky above us if I don't love you." Then he would look ironically up at the sky, and take her arm with a firmer pressure, and they would walk on. Once she asked him, "Richard, did you go to school much when you was little?" And he looked at her a long moment. Then, "Baby, I done told you. My mama died when I was born. And my daddy, he weren't nowhere to be found. Ain't nobody never took care of me. I just moved from one place to another. When one set of folks got tired of me, they sent me down the line. I didn't hardly go to school at all. Then how come you got to be so smart? How come you got to know so much?" And he smiled, pleased, but he said, "Little bit, I don't know so much." Then he said, with a change in his face and voice which she had grown to know, "I just decided me one day that I was going to get to know everything them white bastards knew, and I was going to get to know it better than them, so could no white son of a bitch nowhere never talk me down, and never make me feel like I was dirt when I could read him the alphabet back, front, and sideways. He weren't going to beat my arse then. And if he tried to kill me, I'd take him with me. I swear to my mother I would." Then he looked at her again, and smiled and kissed her. And he said, "That's how I got to know so much, baby." She asked, "And what you going to do, Richard? What you want to be?" And his face clouded. "I don't know. I got to find out. Looks like I can't get my mind straight nohow." She did not know why he couldn't, or she could only dimly face it, but she knew he spoke the truth. She had made her great mistake with Richard in not telling him that she was going to have a child. Perhaps, she thought now, if she had told him everything might have been very different, and he would be living yet. But the circumstances under which she had discovered herself to be pregnant had been such to make her decide, for his sake, to hold her peace a while. Frightened as she was, she dared not add to the panic that overtook him on the last summer of his life. And yet perhaps it was, after all, this failure to demand of his strength what it might then, most miraculously, have been found able to bear. By which, indeed, how could she know? His strength might have been strengthened, for which she prayed tonight to be forgiven. Perhaps she had lost her love because she had not, in the end, believed in it enough. She lived quite a long way from Richard, for underground stops, and when it was time for her to go home, he always took the underground uptown with her and walked her to her door. On a Saturday when they had forgotten the time and stayed together later than usual, he left at her door at 2 o'clock in the morning. They said good night hurriedly, for she was afraid of trouble when she got upstairs, though, in fact, Madame Williams seemed astonishingly indifferent to the hours Elizabeth kept, and he wanted to hurry back home and go to bed. Yet, as he hurried off down the dark, murmuring street, she had a sudden impulse to call him back, to ask him to take her with him and never let her go again. She hurried up the steps, smiling a little at this fancy. It was because he looked so young and defenseless as he walked away, and yet so jaunty and strong. He was to come the next evening at supper time, to make at last, at Elizabeth's urging, the acquaintance of Madame Williams. But he did not come. She drove Madame Williams wild with her sudden sensitivity to footsteps on the stairs. Having told Madame Williams that a gentleman was coming to visit her, she did not dare, of course, to leave the house and go out looking for him, thus giving Madame Williams the impression that she dragged men in off the streets. At 10 o'clock, having eaten no supper, a detail unnoticed by her hostess, she went to bed, her head aching and her heart sick with fear. Fear over what had happened to Richard, who had never kept her waiting before, and fear involving all that was beginning to happen in her body. And on Monday morning he was not at work. She left during the lunch hour to go to his room. He was not there. His landlady said that he had not been there all weekend. While Elizabeth stood trembling and indecisive in the hall, 2 white policemen entered. She knew the moment she saw them, and before they mentioned his name, that something terrible had happened to Richard. Her heart, as on that bright summer day when he had first spoken to her, gave a terrible bound and then was still, with an awful, wounded stillness. She put out one hand to touch the wall in order to keep standing. "This here young lady was just looking for him," she heard the landlady say. They all looked at her. "You this girl?" one of the policemen asked. She looked up at his sweating face, on which a lascivious smile had immediately appeared, and straightened, trying to control her trembling. "Yes," she said. "Where is he?" "He's in jail, honey," the other policeman said. "That's what for." She found, and thanked heaven for it, that a cold, stony rage had entered her. She would otherwise certainly have fallen down or began to weep. She looked at the smiling policeman. "Richard ain't robbed no store," she said. "Tell me where he is." "And I tell you," he said, not smiling, "that your boyfriend robbed a store and he's in jail for it. He's going to stay there, too. Now what you got to say to that?" "And he probably did it for you, too," the other policeman said. "You look like a girl a man could rob a store for." She said nothing. She was thinking how to get to see him, how to get him out. One of them, the smiler, turned now to the landlady and said, "Let's have the key to his room. How long's he been living here?" "About a year," the landlady said. She looked unhappily at Elizabeth. "He seemed like a real nice boy." "Ah, yes," he said, mounting the steps. "They all seem like real nice boys when they pay their rent. You going to take me to see him?" she asked of the remaining policeman. She found herself fascinated by the gun in the holster, the club at his side. She wanted to take that pistol and empty it into his round, red face. To take that club and strike with all her strength against the base of his skull where his cap ended, until the ugly, silky, white man's hair was matted with blood and brains. "Sure, girl," he said. "You're coming right along with us. The man at the station house wants to ask you some questions." The smiling policeman came down again. "Ain't nothing up there," he said. "Let's go." She moved between them out into the sun. She knew that there was nothing to be gained by talking to them anymore. She was entirely in their power. She would have to think faster than they could think. She would have to contain the fear and her hatred, and find out what could be done. Not for anything short of Richard's life, and not possibly even for that would she have wept before them, or asked of them a kindness. A small crowd, children and curious passers-by, followed them as they walked the long, dusty, sunlight street. She hoped only that they would not pass anyone she knew. She kept her head high, looking straight ahead, and felt the skin settle over her bones as though she were wearing a mask. And at the station she somewhat got past their brutal laughter. "What was he doing with you, girl, until 2 o'clock in the morning? Next time you feel like that, girl, you come by here and talk to me." She felt that she was about to burst or vomit or die, though the sweat stood out cruelly, like needless on her brow, and she felt herself, from every side, being covered with a stink and filth. She found out, in their own good time, what she wanted to know. He was being held in a prison downtown called the Tombs. The name made her heart turn over, and she could see him tomorrow. The state or the prison or someone had already assigned him a lawyer. He would be brought to trial next week. But the next day, when she saw him, she wept. He had been beaten, he whispered to her, and he could hardly walk. His body, she later discovered, bore almost no bruises, but was full of strange, painful swellings, and there was a welt above one eye. He had not, of course, robbed the store, but when he left her that Saturday night, had gone down into the underground station to wait for his train. It was late and the trains were slow. He was all alone on the platform, only half awake, thinking, he said, of her. Then, from the far end of the platform, he heard a sound of running, and looking up, he saw 2 colored boys come running down the steps. Their clothes were torn, and they were frightened. They came up the platform and stood near him, breathing hard. He was about to ask them what the trouble was when, running across the tracks toward them and followed by a white man, he saw another colored boy, and at the same instant another white man came running down the underground steps. Then he came full awake in panic. He knew that whatever the trouble was, it was now his trouble also. For these white men would make no distinction between him and the 3 boys they were after. They were all colored, they were about the same age, and here they stood together on the underground platform. And they were all, with no questions asked, herded upstairs, and into the wagon and to the station house. At the station, Richard gave his name and address and age and occupation. Then, for the first time, he stated that he was not involved and asked one of the other boys to corroborate his testimony. This they rather despairingly did. They might, Elizabeth felt, have done it sooner, but they probably also felt that it would be useless to speak. And they were not believed. The owner of the store was being brought there to make the identification. And Richard tried to relax. The man could not say that he had been there if he had never seen him before. But when the owner came, a short man with a bloody shirt, for they had knifed him, in the company of yet another policeman, he looked at the 4 boys before him and said, "Yeah, that's them, all right." Then Richard shouted, "But I wasn't there. Look at me, God damn it. I wasn't there. You black bastard," the man said, looking at him. "You're all the same." Then there was silence in the station, the eyes of the white men all watching. And Richard said, but quietly, knowing that he was lost, "But all the same, mister, I wasn't there." And he looked at the white man's bloody shirt and thought. He told Elizabeth at the bottom of his heart, "I wish to God they'd killed you." Then the questioning began. The 3 boys signed a confession at once, but Richard would not sign. He said at last that he would die before he signed a confession to something he hadn't done. "Well then," said one of them, hitting him suddenly across the head, "maybe you will die, you black son of a bitch." And the beating began. He would not, then, talk to her about it. She found that, before the dread and the hatred that filled her mind, her imagination faltered and held its peace. "What we going to do?" she asked at last. He smiled a vicious smile. She had never seen such a smile on his face before. "Maybe you ought to pray to that Jesus of yours and get him to come down and tell these white men something." He looked at her a long, dying moment. "Because I don't know nothing else to do," he said. She suggested, "Richard, what about another lawyer?" And he smiled again. "I declare," he said, "Little Bit's been holding out on me. She got a fortune tied up in a sock, and she ain't never told me nothing about it. She had been trying to save money for a whole year, but she had only $30. She sat before him, going over in her mind all the things she might do to raise money, even to going on the streets. Then, for very helplessness, she began to shake with sobbing. At this, his face became Richard's face again. He said in a shaking voice, "Now, look here, Little Bit, don't you be like that. We gonna work this out all right." But she could not stop sobbing. "Elizabeth," he whispered. "Elizabeth, Elizabeth." Then the man came and said that it was time for her to go. And she rose. She had brought 2 packets of cigarettes for him, and they were still in her bag. Wholly ignorant of prison, she did not dare to give them to him under the man's eyes. And, somehow, her failure to remember to give him the cigarettes, when she knew how much he smoked, made her wept the harder. She tried and failed to smile at him, and she was slowly led to the door. The sun nearly blinded her, and she heard him whisper behind her, "So long, baby. Be good." In the streets she did not know what to do. She stood a while before the dreadful gates, and then she walked and walked until she came to a coffee shop where taxi drivers and the people who worked in nearby offices hurried in and out all day. Usually she was afraid to go into downtown establishments, where only white people were, but today she did not care. She felt that if anyone said anything to her she would turn and curse him like the lowest bitch on the street. If anyone touched her, she would do her best to send his soul to hell. But no one touched her. No one spoke. She drank her coffee, sitting in the strong sun that fell through the window. Now it came to her how alone, how frightened she was. She had never been so frightened in her life before. She knew that she was pregnant. Knew it, as the old folks said, in her bones. And if Richard should be sent away, what under heaven could she do? 2 years, 3 years. She had no idea how long he might be sent away for. What would she do? And how could she keep her aunt from knowing? And if her aunt should find out, then her father would know too. The tears welled up, and she drank her cold, tasteless coffee. And what would they do with Richard? And if they sent him away, what would he be like? Then, when he returned, she looked out into the quiet, sunny streets, and for the first time in her life, she hated it all, the white city, the white world. She could not, that day, think of one decent white person in the whole world. She sat there, and she hoped that one day God, with tortures inconceivable, would grind them utterly into humility, and make them know that black boys and black girls, whom they treated with such condescension, such disdain and such good humor, had hearts like human beings, too, more human hearts than theirs. But Richard was not sent away. Against the testimony of the 3 robbers, and her own testimony, and, under oath, the storekeeper's indecision, there was no evidence on which to convict him. The courtroom seemed to feel, with some complacency and some disappointment, that it was his great good luck to be left off so easily. They went immediately to his room. And there, she was never all her life long to forget it. He threw himself face downward on his bed and wept. She had only seen one other man weep before, her father, and it had not been like this. She touched him, but he did not stop. Her own tears fell on his dirty, uncombed hair. She tried to hold him, but for a long while he would not be held. His body was like iron. She could find no softness in it. She sat curled like a frightened child on the edge of the bed, her hand on his back, waiting for the storm to pass over. It was then that she decided not to tell him yet about the child. By and by he called her name, and then he turned, and she held him against her breast, while he sighed and shook. He fell asleep at last, clinging to her as though he were going down into the water for the last time. And it was the last time. That night he cut his wrists with his razor, and he was found in the morning by his landlady, his eyes staring upward with no light, dead among the scarlet sheets. And now they were singing, "Somebody needs you, Lord. Come by here." At her back, above her, she heard Gabriel's voice. He had risen and was helping the others to pray through. She wondered if John were still on his knees, or had risen, with a child's impatience, and was staring around the church. There was a stiffness in him that would be hard to break, but that, nevertheless, would one day surely be broken. As hers had been and Richard's, there was no escape for anyone. God was everywhere, terrible, the living God. And so high, the song said, you couldn't get over him. So low you couldn't get under him. So wide you couldn't get around him, but must come in at the door. And she knew today that door. A living, wrathful gate. She knew through what fires the soul must crawl, and with what weeping one passed over. Men spoke of how the heart broke up, but never spoke of how the soul hung speechless in the pause, the void, the terror between the living and the dead. How, all garments rent and cast aside, the naked soul passed over the very mouth of hell. Once there was no turning back. Once there, the soul remembered, though the heart sometimes forgot. For the world called to the heart, which stammered to reply. Life and love and revelry, and most falsely hope, called the forgetful the human heart. Only the soul, obsessed with the journey it had made, and had still to make, pursued its mysterious and dreadful end, and carried, heavy with weeping and bitterness, the heart along. And, therefore, there was war in heaven, and weeping before the throne. The heart chained to the soul, and the soul imprisoned within the flesh. A weeping, a confusion, and a weight unendurable filled all the earth. Only the love of God could establish order in this chaos. To him the soul must turn to be delivered. But what a turning! How could she fail to pray that he would have mercy on her son, and spare him the sin-born anguish of his father and his mother, and that his heart might know a little joy before the long bitterness descended? Yet she knew that her weeping and her prayers were in vain. What was coming would surely come. Nothing could stop it. She had tried once to protect someone and had only hurled him into prison. And she thought tonight, as she had thought so often, that it might have been better, after all, to have done what she had first determined in her heart to do, to have given her son away to strangers, who might have loved him more than Gabriel had ever loved him. She had believed him when he said that God had sent him to her for a sign. He had said that he would cherish her until the grave, and that he would love her nameless son as though he were his own flesh. And he had kept the letter of his promise. He had fed him and clothed him and taught him the Bible, but the Spirit was not there. And he cherished, if he cherished her, only because she was the mother of his son, Roy. All of this she had through the painful years divined. He certainly did not know she knew it, and she wondered if he knew it himself. She had met him through Florence. Florence and she had met at work in the middle of the summer, a year after Richard's death. John was then over 6 months old. She was very lonely that summer, and beaten down. She was living alone with John in a furnished room even grimmer than the room that had been hers in Madame Williams's apartment. She had, of course, left Madame Williams's immediately upon the death of Richard, saying that she had found a sleep-in job in the country. She had been terribly grateful that summer for Madame Williams's indifference. The woman had simply not seemed to see that Elizabeth, overnight, had become an old woman and was half mad with fear and grief. She wrote her aunt the driest and briefest and coldest of notes, not wishing in any way to awaken whatever concern might yet slumber in her breast, telling her the same thing she had told Madame Williams, and telling HR not to worry, she was in the hands of God. And she certainly was. Through a bitterness that only the hand of God could have laid on her. This same hand brought her through. Florence and Elizabeth worked as cleaning women in a high, vast, stony office building on Wall Street. They arrived in the evening and spent the night going through the great deserted halls and the silent offices with mops and pails and brooms. It was terrible work and Elizabeth hated it, but it was at night and she had taken it joyfully, since it meant that she could take care of John herself all day and not have to spend extra money to keep in a nursery. She worried about him all night long, of course, but at least at night he was sleeping. She could only pray that the house would not burn down, that he would not fall out of bed or, in some mysterious way, turn on the gas burner, and she had asked the woman next door, who unhappily drank too much, to keep an eye out for him. This woman, with whom she sometimes spent an hour or so in the afternoons, and her landlady, were the only people she saw. She had stopped seeing Richard's friends because, for some reason, she did not want them to know about Richard's child. And because, too, the moment he was dead it became immediately apparent on both sides how little they had in common. And she did not seek new people. Rather, she fled from them. She could not bear, in her changed and fallen state, to submit herself to the eyes of others. The Elizabeth that she had been was buried far away, with her lost and silent father, with her aunt in Richard's grave, and the Elizabeth she had become she did not recognize, she did not want to know. But one night, when work was ended, Florence invited her to share a cup of coffee in the all-night coffee shop nearby. Elizabeth had, of course, been invited before by other people, the night watchman for example, but she had always said no. She pleaded the excuse of her baby, whom she must rush home to feed. She was pretending in those days to be a young widow, and she wore a wedding ring. Very shortly, fewer people asked her, and she achieved the reputation of being stuck up. Florence had scarcely ever spoken to her before she arrived at this merciful unpopularity, but Elizabeth had noticed Florence. She moved in a silent ferocity of dignity which barely escaped being ludicrous. She was extremely unpopular also, and she had nothing whatever to do with any of the women she worked with. She was, for one thing, a good deal older, and she seemed to have nothing to laugh or gossip about. She came to work and she did her work and she left. One could not imagine what she was thinking as she marched so grimly down the halls. Her head tied up in a rag, a bucket and a mop in her hands. Elizabeth thought that she must once have been very rich and had lost her money. And she felt for her, as one fallen woman for another, a certain kinship. A cup of coffee together, as day was breaking, became in time their habit. They sat together in the coffee shop, which was always empty when they arrived and was crowded 15 minutes later when they left, and had their coffee and donuts before they took the underground uptown. While they had their coffee, and on the ride uptown they talked principally about Florence, how badly people treated her, and how empty her life was now that her husband was dead. He had adored her, she told Elizabeth, and satisfied her every whim, but he had tended to irresponsibility. If she had told him once, she had told him 100 times, "Frank, you better take out life insurance." But he had thought, and wasn't it just like a man, that he would live forever. Now here she was, a woman getting along in years, forced to make her living among all the black scum of this wicked city. Elizabeth, a little astonished at the need for confession betrayed by this proud woman, listened, nevertheless, with great sympathy. She was very grateful for Florence's interest. Florence was so much older and seemed so kind. It was no doubt this, Florence's age and kindness, that led Elizabeth, with no premeditation, to take Florence into her confidence. Looking back, she found it hard to believe that she could have been so desperate or so childish. Though, again, on looking back, she was able to see clearly what she then so incoherently felt. How much she needed another human being, somewhere, who knew the truth about her. Florence had often said how glad she would be to make the acquaintance of little Johnny. She was sure, she said, that any child of Elizabeth's must be a wonderful child. On a Sunday near the end of that summer, Elizabeth dressed him in his best clothes and took him to Florence's house. She was oddly and fearfully depressed that day, and John was not in a good mood. She found herself staring at him darkly, as though she were trying to read his future in his face. He would grow big one day, he would talk, and he would ask her questions. What questions would he ask her? What answers would she give? She surely would not be able to lie to him indefinitely about his father. For one day he would be old enough to realize that it was not his father's name he bore. Richard had been a fatherless child. She helplessly, bitterly remembered as she carried John through the busy, summer, Sunday streets. When one set of folks got tired of me, they sent me down the line. Yes, down the line, through poverty, hunger, wandering, cruelty, fear, and trembling to death. And she thought of the boys who had gone to prison. Were they there still? Would John be one of these boys one day? These boys now who stood before drugstore windows, before pool rooms, on every street corner, who whistled after her, whose lean bodies fairly rang, it seemed, with idleness and malice and frustration. How could she hope, alone, and in famine as she was, to put herself between him and this so wide and raging destruction? And then, as though to confirm her in all her dark imaginings, he began, as she reached the underground steps, to whimper and moan and cry. And he kept this up, too, all the way uptown. So that, what with the impossibility of pleasing him that day, no matter what she did, what with restless wait and the heat, and the smiling, staring people, and the strange dread that weighed on her so heavily, she was nearly ready to weep by the time she arrived at Florence's door. He, at that moment, to her exasperated relief, became the most cheerful of infants. Florence was wearing a heavy, old-fashioned garnet brooch, which, as she opened the door, immediately attracted John's eye. He began reaching for the brooch and babbling and spitting at Florence as though he had known her all of his short life. "Well," said Florence, "when he get big enough to really go after the ladies, you're going to have your hands full, girl." "That," said Elizabeth grimly, "is the Lord's truth. He keeps me so busy now, I don't know half the time if I'm coming or going." Florence, meanwhile, attempted to distract John's attention from the brooch by offering him an orange. But he had seen oranges before. He merely looked at it a moment before letting it fall to the floor. He began again, in his disturbingly fluid fashion, to quarrel about the brooch. "He like you," said Elizabeth finally, calmed a little by watching him. "You must be tired," said Florence then. "Put him down there," and she dragged one large, easy chair to the table so that John could watch them while they ate. "I got a letter from my brother the other day," she said, bringing the food to the table. "His wife, poor ailing soul, done passed on, and he thinking about coming north." "You ain't never told me," said Elizabeth, with a quick and rather false interest. "You had a brother, and he coming up here, so he say. Ain't nothing, I reckon, to keep him down home no more, now Deborah's gone." She sat down opposite Elizabeth. "I ain't seen him," she said musingly, "for more than 20 years. Then it'll be a great day," Elizabeth smiled, "when you two meet again." Florence shook her head and motioned for Elizabeth to start eating. "No," she said, "we ain't never got along, and I don't reckon he's changed." 20 years is a mighty long time," Elizabeth said. "He's bound to have changed some. That man," said Florence, "would have to do a whole lot of changing before him and me hit it off." "No," she paused grimly, sadly. "I'm mighty sorry he's coming. I didn't look to see him no more in this world, or in the next one, neither." This was not, Elizabeth felt, the way a sister ought to talk about her brother, especially to someone who knew him not at all, and who would, probably, eventually meet him. She asked helplessly, "What do he do?" "Your brother?" "He's some kind of preacher," said Florence. "I ain't never heard him. When I was home he weren't doing nothing but chasing after women and lying in the ditches. Drunk." "I hope," laughed Elizabeth, "he done changed his ways at least." "Folks," said Florence, "can change their ways much as they want to, but I don't care how many times you change your ways. What's in you is in you, and it's got to come out." "Yes," said Elizabeth thoughtfully. "But don't you think," she hesitantly asked, "that the Lord can change a person's heart?" "I done heard it said often enough," said Florence, "but I got yet to see it. These niggers running around, talking about the Lord done changed their hearts. Ain't nothing happened to them niggers. They got the same old black hearts they was born with. I reckon the Lord done give them those hearts. And honey, the Lord don't give out no second helpings. I'm here to tell you. No, said Elizabeth heavily after a long pause. She turned to look at John, who was grimly destroying the square, tasseled doilies that decorated Florence's easy chair. I reckon that's the truth. Look like it go around once, and that's that. You miss it, and you's fixed for fair. Now you sound, said Florence, mighty sad all of a sudden. What's the matter with you? Nothing, she said. She turned back to the table. Then, helplessly and thinking that she must not say too much, I was just thinking about this boy here, what's going to happen to him, how I'm going to raise him, in this awful city all by myself. But you ain't fixing, is you? Asked Florence. To stay single all your days? You's a right young girl and a right pretty girl. I wouldn't be in no hurry if I was you to find no new husband. I don't believe the nigger's been born what knows how to treat a woman right. You got time, honey, so take your time. I ain't, said Elizabeth quietly. Got so much time. She could not stop herself, though something warned her to hold her.
Oh, guys.
Hey, Neon, just saying. Why not? Reloading. I'm out of here.
Enemy spotted mid.
I'm out of here.
Annihilated. Enemy spotted mid.
Gotta go.
Spike down mid.
Take this.
Good attempt. Enemy spotted mid.
One enemy remaining.
Gotta go. Go, go, go! Reloading. I'm out of here. Again. I'm out of here. Go, go, go! Gotta go!
3 suppressed.
Enemy spotted B. Enemy spotted A.
Shadows traveling. Target sighted B.
Spike down B.
Flashbang. Spiking B. Blinding.
Gotta go!
One enemy remaining.
Watch out! Reloading.
If you must fall, then fall near me.
Hello, guys.
Need a drop.
Hello, hello.
I'm out of here. Go, go, go! Gotta go! Let's go!
Spike down B. One enemy remaining.
My ultimate is ready.
Go, go, go!
It is finished.
They're supposed to be fighting back, right?
Gotta go! Go, go, go!
Here.
Get these losers out of here.
Spike down B.
You fought well.
Enemy spotted mid.
I'm out of here! Watch out!
Watch them run.
One enemy remaining.
Go!
Flash.
You were a boulder. I am a mountain.
Wait until I blind them to strike.
Yo, Sage, can I get time?
Gotta go!
Get
That's not my skin, bro. That's yeah, I'm done.
I am everywhere.
Multiple enemies A.
Take this! Alice! This way!
Cover going out. Flashbang. Reloading. Flash.
I think rotate. Oh, no, no.
Knife deployed.
No, they still have.
30 seconds left.
Target sighted A.
10 seconds left. One enemy remaining.
Fragment.
Nice, guys.
Let them try to get through me. Gotta go!
Need a drop. Thank you.
Uma demonstração ao vivo do policarbonato radiante, o incrível material que constitui a nossa cúpula protetora.
Bury their sky.
The hunt begins!
Shutting them down.
I'm out of here. My territory!
Spike down A.
I'm out of here. Gotta go.
Spike spotted A.
Last player standing.
Let's make a plan, then execute.
Need a drop.
Need a drop.
O Jardim dos Heróis, uma
I'm out of here.
espada do escudo, dedicado àquela que conteve a maré e que serviu de inspiração para a cúpula que agora nos protege a todos.
Charlie Mike, let's move.
Go, go, go!
Multiple enemies B.
Gotta go!
Multiple enemies B.
Go, go, go!
Smoke again.
Gotta go! Go, go, go! Take this! I've got your trail.
Last player standing.
You had your fun. My turn.
Strike at their weak points. If one link breaks, the rest will follow.
Need a drop.
Need a drop.
I'm out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Together. Watch this.
Gotta go!
Spike down B. Spike
I'm out of
planted.
here.
Give me those back. Enemy
One
spotted
enemy
B.
remaining.
Go, go, go!
Good job, guys.
I've tried explode. I'm out of here. Reloading.
We get a pick, we move in. Got it? Can someone get this? Thank you.
I'm out of here.
The hunt begins.
Enemy spotted mid. Enemy
Gotta
removed.
go! Go, go, go!
Spike planted.
I'm out of here.
Shadows traveling.
Enemy spotted A.
No one walks away. Flash.
Here we go!
Bad guy down. Nice knowing you.
One enemy remaining.
Almost out.
Their backs will That's at least one of us.
Go, go, go!
Need a drop. Thank you.
Reloading. Gotta go! I'm out of here. Almost out.
Get out of there.
Spike down, attacker
Go,
spawn.
go, go!
Opponent's killed.
My territory! I have them now!
Stealing sight.
Watch out! Coming through!
Suppressor.
Maybe they're others.
Spike planted.
I'm out of here! Running low.
One enemy remaining.
There. Go, go, go!
Good job.
I didn't come here to die. Gotta go! Gotta go!
Attack when they're suppressed. I cut their options, they make mistakes.
Go, go, go!
Need a drop.
Go, go, go!
Yes. Let's push out. Let's hold positions. Let's hold positions.
Gotta go! There! Running low.
Target sighted. Talk flashback. Watch them run. Knife deployed. One suppressed.
Last player standing. Thirty seconds left. Spike planted.
Blinding.
Just sit.
Cover going out. Cover going out.
Last round in the half.
Can someone get this?
We're not coming back.
Agradecemos a sua visita ao Jardim dos Heróis, criado em honra dos corajosos heróis que salvaram a nossa cidade e continuam a proteger o nosso mundo da ameaça da Terra Alfa.
ما بدأ.
Gotta go! I'm out of here! Go, go, go!
Enemy spotted A.
Spike planted.
Coming through!
I've got your trail. Welcome to my world.
My territory! My rules!
Last player standing.
What the fuck, chat? What the fuck, chat?
Her piece, the words poured out. You see this wedding ring? Well, I bought this ring myself. This boy ain't got no daddy. Now she had said it. The words could not be called back. And she felt, as Sheb sat, trembling, at Florence's table, a reckless, pained relief. Florence stared at her with a pity so intense that it resembled anger. She looked at John, and then back at Elizabeth. You poor thing, said Florence, leaning back in her chair, her face still filled with this strange, brooding fury. You was had a time, ain't you? I was scared. Elizabeth brought out, shivering, still compelled to speak. I ain't never, said Florence, seen it to fail. Look like ain't no woman born what don't get walked over by some no-count man. Look like ain't no woman nowhere but ain't been dragged down in the dirt by some man. And left there, too, while he go on about his business. Elizabeth sat at the table, numb, with nothing more to say. What he do? Asked Florence, finally. Run off and leave you? Oh, no, cried Elizabeth quickly, and the tears sprang to her eyes. He weren't like that. He died, just like I say. He got in trouble and he died, a long time before this boy was born. She began to weep with the same helplessness with which she had been speaking. Florence rose and came over to Elizabeth, holding Elizabeth's head against her breast. He wouldn't never have left me, said Elizabeth, but he died. And now she wept, after her long austerity, as though she would never be able to stop. Hush now, said Florence gently. Hush now. You're going to frighten the little fellow. He don't want to see his mama cry. All right, she whispered to John, who had ceased his attempts at destruction, and stared now at the two women. All right. Everything's all right. Elizabeth sat up and reached in her handbag for a handkerchief, and began to dry her eyes. Yes, said Florence, moving to the window. The menfolk, they die, all right, and it's us women who walk around, like the Bible says, and mourn. The menfolk, they die, and it's over for them, but we women, we have to keep on living and try to forget what they done to us. Yes, Lord. And she paused. She turned and came back to Elizabeth. Yes, Lord, she repeated. Don't I know? I'm mighty sorry, said Elizabeth, to upset your nice dinner this way. Girl, said Florence, don't you say a word about being sorry, or I'll show you to this door. You pick up that boy and sit down there in that easy chair and pull yourself together. I'm going out in the kitchen and make us something cold to drink. You try not to fret, honey. The Lord, he ain't going to let you fall but so low. Then she met Gabriel 2 or 3 weeks later, at Florence's house on a Sunday. Nothing Florence had said had prepared her for him. She had expected him to be older than Florence, and bald or gray. But he seemed considerably younger than his sister, with all his teeth and hair. There he sat, that Sunday, in Florence's tiny, fragile parlor, a very rock. It seemed to the eye of her confusion, in her so weary land. She remembered that as she mounted the stairs with John's heavy weight in her arms, and as she entered the door, she heard music, which became perceptible fainter as Florence closed the door behind her. John had heard it too and had responded by wriggling and moving his hands in the air and making noises meant, she supposed, to be taken for a song. Use a nigger, all right, she thought with amusement and impatience. For it was someone's gramophone, on a lower floor, filling the air with the slow, high, measured wailing of the blues. Gabriel rose, it seemed to her, with a speed and eagerness that were not merely polite. She wondered immediately if Florence had told him about her, and this caused her to stiffen with a tentative anger against Florence, and with pride and fear. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she found there a strange humility, an altogether unexpected kindness. She felt the anger go out of her, and her defensive pride. But somewhere, crouching, the fear remained. Then Florence introduced them, saying, "Elizabeth, this here's my brother I been telling you so much about. He's a preacher, honey. So we got to be mighty careful what we talk about when he's around." Then she said, with a smile less barbed and ambiguous than his sister's remark, "Ain't no need to be afraid of me, sister. I ain't nothing but a poor, weak vessel in the hands of the Lord." "You see," said Florence grimly. She took John from his mother's arms. "And this here's little Johnny," she said. "Shake hands with the preacher, Johnny." But John was staring at the door that held back the music, towards which, with an insistence at once furious and feeble, his hands were still outstretched. He looked questioningly, reproachfully at his mother, who laughed, watching him, and said, "Johnny want to hear some more of that music. He liked to started dancing when we was coming up the stairs." Gabriel laughed and said, circling around Florence to look into John's face, "Got a man in the Bible, son, who like music too. He used to play on his harp before the king, and he got to dancing once day before the Lord. You reckon you going to dance for the Lord one of these days?" John looked with a child's impenetrable gravity into the preacher's face, as though he were turning this question over in his mind and would answer when he had thought it out. Gabriel smiled at him, a strange smile. Strangely, she thought, loving, and touched him on the crown of the head. "He a mighty fine boy," said Gabriel. "With them big eyes, he ought to see everything in the Bible." And they all laughed. Florence moved to deposit John in the easy chair that was his Sunday throne. And Elizabeth found that she was watching Gabriel, unable to find in the man before her the brother whom Florence so despised. They sat down at the table, John placed between herself and Florence and opposite Gabriel. "So," Elizabeth said, with a nervous pleasantness, it being necessary, she felt, to say something, "you just getting to this big city? It must seem mighty strange to you." His eyes were still on John, whose eyes had not left him. Then he looked again at Elizabeth. She felt that the air between them was beginning to be charged, and she could find no name or reason for the secret excitement that moved in her. "It's mighty big," he said, "and looks to me and sounds to me like the devil's working every day." This was in reference to the music, which had not ceased, but she felt immediately that it included her. This and something else in Gabriel's eyes made her look down quickly to her plate. "He ain't," said Florence briskly, "working no harder up here than he worked down home. Them niggers down home," she said to Elizabeth, "they think New York ain't nothing but one long Sunday drunk. They don't know. Somebody better tell them. They can get better moonshine right there where they is than they likely to hear, and cheaper, too. But I do hope," he said with a smile, "that you ain't taken to drinking moonshine, sister." "It wasn't never me," she said promptly. "Had that habit." "Don't know," he persisted, still smiling and still looking at Elizabeth. "Tell me folks do things up north they wouldn't think about doing down home." "Folks got their dirt to do," said Florence. "They going to do it, no matter where they is. Folks do lot of things down home they don't want nobody to know about. Like my aunt used to say," Elizabeth said, smiling timidly. "She used to say, folks sure better not do in the dark what they scared to look at in the light." She had meant it as a kind of joke, but the words were not out of her mouth before she longed for the power to call them back. They rang in her own ears like a confession. "That's the Lord's truth," he said, after the briefest pause. "Does you really believe that?" She forced herself to look up at him, and felt at that moment the intensity of the attention that Florence fixed on her, as though she were trying to shout a warning. She knew that it was something in Gabriel's voice that had caused Florence, suddenly, to be so wary and so tense. But she did not drop her eyes from Gabriel's eyes. She answered him, "Yes, that's the way I want to live." "Then the Lord's going to bless you," he said, "and open up the windows of heaven for you and that boy. He's going to pour down blessings on you till you won't know where to put them. You mark my words." "Yes," said Florence mildly. "You mark his words." But neither of them looked at her. It came into Elizabeth's mind, filling her mind. All things work together for good to them that love the Lord. She tried to obliterate this burning phrase and what it made her feel. What it made her feel, for the first time since the death of Richard, was hope. His voice had made her feel that she was not altogether cast down, that God might raise her again in honor. His eyes had made her know that she could be, again this time in honor, a woman. Then, from what seemed to be a great cloudy distance, he smiled at her and she smiled. The distant gramophone stuck now, suddenly, on a grinding, wailing, sardonic trumpet note. This blind, ugly crying swelled the moment and filled the room. She looked down at John. A hand somewhere struck the gramophone arm and sent the silver needle on its way through the whirling, black grooves, like something bobbing, anchorless, in the middle of the sea. "Johnny's done fell asleep," she said. She, who had descended with such joy and pain, had begun her upward climb. Upward, with her baby, on the steep, steep side of the mountain. She felt a great commotion in the air around her. A great excitement, muted, waiting on the Lord. And the air seemed to tremble as before a storm. A light seemed to hang just above and all around them, about to burst into revelation. In the great crying, the great singing all around her, in the wind that gathered to fill the church, she did not hear her husband. And she thought of John as sitting, silent now and sleepy, far in the back of the church, watching with that wonder and that terror in his eyes. She did not raise her head. She wished to tarry yet a little longer, that God might speak to her. It had been before this very altar that she had come to kneel, so many years ago, to be forgiven. When the autumn came and the air was dry and sharp, and the wind high, she was always with Gabriel. Florence did not approve of this, and Florence said so often. But she never said more than this, for the reason Elizabeth decided that she had no evil to report. It was only that she was not fond of her brother. But even had Florence been able to find a language unmistakable in which to convey her prophecies, Elizabeth could no have heeded her because Gabriel had become her strength. He watched over her and her baby as though it had become his calling. He was very good to John, and played with him and bought him things as though John were his own. She knew that his wife had died childless, and that he had always wanted a son. He was praying still, he told her, that God would bless him with a son. She thought sometimes, lying on her bed alone, and thinking of all his kindness, that perhaps John was that son, and that he would grow one day to comfort and bless them both. Then she thought how, now, she would embrace again the faith she had abandoned, and walk again in the light from which, with Richard, she had so far fled. Sometimes, thinking of Gabriel, she remembered Richard. His voice, his breath, his arms, with a terrible pain, and then she felt herself shrinking from Gabriel's anticipated touch. But this shrinking she would not countenance. She told herself that it was foolish and sinful to look backward when her safety lay before her, like a hiding place hewn in the side of the mountain. "Sister," he asked one night, "don't you reckon you ought to give your heart to the Lord?" They were in the dark streets, walking to church. He had asked her this question before, but never in such a tone. She had never before felt so compelling a need to reply. "I reckon," she said. "If you call on the Lord," he said, "He'll lift you up. He'll give you your heart's desire." "I'm a witness," he said, and smiled at her. "You call on the Lord, you wait on the Lord, He'll answer. God's promises don't never fail." Her arm was in his, and she felt him trembling with his passion. "Till you come," she said in a low, trembling voice. "I didn't never hardly go to church at all, Reverend. Look like I couldn't see my way nohow. I was all bowed down with shame and sin." She could hardly bring the last words out, and as she spoke tears were in her eyes. She had told him that John was nameless, and she had tried to tell him something of her suffering, too. In those days he had seemed to understand, and he had not stood in judgment on her. When had he so greatly changed? Or was it that he had not changed, but that her eyes had been opened through the pain he had caused her? Well, he said, I done come, and it was the hand of the Lord what sent me. He brought us together for a sign. You fall on your knees and see if that ain't so. You fall down and ask him to speak to you tonight. Yes, a sign, she thought, a sign of his mercy, a sign of HS forgiveness. When they reached the church doors he paused, and looked at her and made his promise. Sister Elizabeth, he said, when you go down on your knees tonight, I want you to ask the Lord to speak to your heart, and tell you how to answer what I'm going to say. She stood a little below him, one foot lifted to the short, stone step that led to the church entrance, and looked up into his face. And looking into his face, which burned, in the dim yellow light that hung about them there, like the face of a man who has wrestled with angels and demons and looked on the face of God, it came to her oddly and all at once that she had become a woman. Sister Elizabeth, he said, the Lord's been speaking to my heart, and I believe it's his will that you and me should be man and wife. And he paused. She said nothing. His eyes moved over her body. I know, he said, trying to smile, and in a lower voice, I'm a lot older than you, but that don't make no difference. I'm a mighty strong man yet. I done been down the line, Sister Elizabeth, and maybe I can keep you from making some of my mistakes. Bless the Lord. Maybe I can help keep your foot from stumbling. Again, girl, for as long as we's in this world. Still she waited. And I'll love you, he said. And I'll honor you until the day God calls me home. Slow tears rose to her eyes. Of joy for what she had come to. Of anguish for the road that had brought her here. And I'll love your son, your little boy, he said at last. Just like he was my own. He won't never have to fret or worry about nothing. He won't never be cold or hungry as long as I'm alive and I got my 2 hands to work with. I swear this before my God, he said. Because he done give me back something I thought was lost. Yes, she thought, a sign that he is mighty to save. Then she moved and stood on the short step, next to him before the doors. Sister Elizabeth, he said, and she would carry to the grave the memory of his grace and humility at that moment. Will you pray? Yes, she said. I've been praying. I'm going to pray. They had entered this church, these doors, and when the pastor made the altar call, she rose, while she heard them praising God, and walked down the long church aisle.